First off, we will hear from some of our wonderful dedoc voices. If you've never heard of them, the dedoc voices are a network of advocates, and our scholarship program enables people living with diabetes and diabetes advocates to access scientific conferences. We believe in nothing about us without us, and that means that people with diabetes have a space and a place at these conferences, that their voices are heard. And of course, that the community out there has insights into these conferences and what's being discussed there. So we will now talk to two of the dedoc voices who joined us for ADA this summer. ADA is one of the largest diabetes conferences in the world, hosted by the American Diabetes Association. And I'm really happy to welcome Linxi to the stage to share all about this.
Hi, Steffi.
Hi, Linxi. So happy to have you here as our first guest of the night. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, your diabetes advocacy journey, and where the dedoc voices came into that.
So I always tell people that my full-time job is managing my diabetes, and then my day job is ensuring that folks with diabetes are incorporated in the research about us. So I lead patient engagement in diabetes research in Canada. So I've been on the other side of bringing diabetes advocates into the research that we're making in Canada. But of course, I wanted to be included as well and see how I could leverage my advocacy and my lived experiences in these spaces. Before I got diagnosed with diabetes, I did a lot of advocacy in mental health and youth well-being. But when I found out about dedoc and the Voices program specifically, it was an amazing opportunity for me to be on the other side of the programs that I run every day and see how I could bring my lived experience to these scientific spaces.
So this was the first time for you visiting ADA, right? Were there any standout moments, anything that you really took away from the conference?
First time at ADA, which I think in my mind was almost like scientific diabetes prom, the event to go to if you're into diabetes research. I would say a few takeaways for me was first, it really seemed to be like the event where it sets the baseline and the agenda for what's coming up for the next year in diabetes research. So it was a really great way to understand, okay, what are the trends, what's important to folks that are doing this research, but also to industry. That is really important, I think, in informing my advocacy and the work that we're doing here in Canada, and going back to community and saying, this is the momentum we're seeing in research. How can we better inform that as community? The other thing that I really took away is that there's such an opportunity to have more advocates at the table. There's this really important reciprocal value when we have advocates at these congresses and scientific sessions, but to have more advocates at Diabetes Scientific Prom would be amazing, because we can help co-create that momentum and agenda for the years to come.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. So what were your highlights of that week? I mean, you met a lot of different advocates who most of them you would have only seen online beforehand. What were your favorite moments?
Meeting folks was definitely a highlight, and I'll be specific about that because before this was my first in-person dedoc Voices experience, and I'd always heard about advocates saying, it's such a highlight to meet each other. I think for me, the reason that was a highlight was the mentorship and the ability to not just receive that passive mentorship, because we follow each other online and we learn from each other's posts and webinars and podcasts, but when you're in a room together, that active opportunity to learn from each other is incredible. But also the opportunity to engage in conversations with research and industry leaders was invaluable, because sometimes we make assumptions about why things are done. They make assumptions about us, but to be in a room together and actually ask those questions was also an incredible experience.
I can imagine. Were there any sessions that you especially remember or that were especially interesting or surprising to you during ADA?
Two sessions stand out for me. The first one, there was a session about exercise in type 1. And it was really interesting to see how people and the research team, there was folks with lived experience on the research team, and they had been thinking about how to best support people. And there was questions from the room by the advocates about how do you best support people with cycles, hormonal cycles, and exercise. And it was really great to engage in a conversation with the research team after that presentation about, these tools have been great so far, but let's make them better for people who have an additional variable to take care of. And there was an openness by that team. And another session about screening for type 1 genetic risk, and how we can do better in figuring out demographics of who's currently being screened and who isn't, and why that is.
Yeah, I can imagine that. I didn't get to catch that session, but yeah, it's great to hear from you and also be able to follow everyone on social media and get those snippets and those learnings. And we see your fellow dedoc voices chiming in as well here in the comments. Thank you so much for the support. Linxi, anything else you want to share with the community? Any last parting words for our first guest of the night?
I would say that if you're unsure if this is a space for you, it's a space for you. And I say that because there is no model advocate, there is no model patient partner, whatever the language that is used in your community, there is no such thing as the perfect fit, because we're all the perfect fit. There's no example of what type 1, type 2, or MODY diabetes looks like, which means that you're the right fit. So I encourage anyone and everyone to apply, because your voice matters, your experiences matter, and it's a big burden to be present in these spaces when, they're not built for us. But when you do it with community and with your fellow advocates, we're there for each other, we support each other, and it's an incredible experience that brings value not only to you and your community, but to science and medical science in general.
Well, Linxi, I have nothing to add there. I think that was the perfect summary of what the dedoc Voices program is all about. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And we look forward to seeing you again at many other conferences.
Thanks so much, Steffi. And I'm really looking forward to learning from the rest of advocates. Thanks, folks.